Some wars are remembered because they happen. Others disappeared silently. This is the story of conflicts approved, planned, then quietly erased. Orders were written, signatures placed, timetables finalized behind closed doors. Maps were drawn, routes selected, objectives marked with absolute precision. Troops were positioned, equipment staged, clocks synchronized across multiple command rooms. Everything indicated inevitability. The war was no longer hypothetical. Yet, history never recorded the moment that followed. Because the final order was never given. No announcement followed. No explanation was released publicly. Wrenched away. The machinery of war simply halted. Files were sealed, marked classified, and moved into archives. Official records show preparation. Silence explains everything else. The decision was deliberate, calculated, and intentionally undocumented, because revealing restraint can be as dangerous as revealing action. What stopped the war was not morality, but consequence. Leaders understood the cost would exceed any possible victory, so they chose delay, then denial, then erasure. Pause. The world never noticed what almost began. Orders remained valid, yet execution timelines quietly dissolved into uncertainty. Operational units waited, unaware the final signal would never arrive. Logistics chains paused mid-motion, supplies halted between departure and arrival. Command rooms remained occupied, yet conversations shifted toward restraint. Silence replaced urgency, transforming readiness into prolonged anticipation. Every system stayed armed, prepared, but deliberately unactivated. The cancellation existed only as absence, not as written record. Historians later found preparations, but no trace of cancellation. Official timelines skip abruptly from readiness to normalcy. Past have been around adult. What vanished was not the plan, but the decision itself. Such silence prevents accountability, but preserves strategic ambiguity. Sometimes restraint reshapes history more than action ever could. The war remained real only inside locked rooms and memories and sarcolages. Outside, the world continued, unaware of avoided catastrophe. No monuments mark conflicts that never officially occurred. Yet consequences shaped future decisions long after silence settled. The absence of war became its own historical outcome. This was the war history almost had to remember. Stopping a war requires reasons stronger than momentum already set. Momentum favors action, not hesitation, inside military decision systems. Yet momentum can be reversed when consequences outweigh projected gains. Leaders confront scenarios extending far beyond immediate objectives. Every operation triggers chains impossible to fully control. Escalation calculations reveal how quickly limited actions expand uncontrollably. Retaliation timelines compress faster than diplomacy can respond. Allies were consulted, hesitated, and quietly expressed reservations. Support was conditional, fragile, and far from guaranteed. Without unity, operational success risks strategic isolation. Economic repercussions loomed larger than battlefield outcomes. Supply disruptions threatened stability well beyond military theaters. Intelligence assessments warned of unpredictable secondary responses. Adversaries might respond indirectly asymmetrically, and globally. Containment would require resources exceeding original operational scope. Military readiness does not equal political readiness. Public justification remained fragile under closer scrutiny. Legal frameworks offered authorization, but little long-term legitimacy. Internal debates intensified as launch windows approached. Parents, some voices urged caution, others pressed relentlessly forward. What ultimately, risk assessments tipped decisively toward restraint. Delay became strategy, not weakness. Orders were neither canceled nor confirmed. Ambiguity preserved flexibility for future contingencies. Standing down avoided immediate costs while maintaining leverage. Preparation remained intact, execution indefinitely postponed. This pause allowed recalibration without public reversal. Strategic patience replaced irreversible commitment. The decision vanished into classified silence. No single document explains why the war stopped. The answer exists only across intersecting calculations. Each factor alone insufficient, combined overwhelmingly persuasive. Together, they formed an invisible barrier against action. The war ended before it officially began. History records outcomes, not decisions deliberately withheld. What stopped this war remains classified by absence. Had restraint failed, the next phase was already meticulously prepared. Flight corridors were plotted to avoid detection and interception. Operational layers unfolded in synchronized sequences across multiple domains. Air movements would have preceded everything else. Flight corridors were plotted to avoid detection and interception. Navigation relied on analog calculations, not digital certainty. Simultaneously, naval formations prepared to reposition silently overnight. Radio silence would mask movement across contested waters. Subsurface assets would secure unseen approaches first. Initial objectives focused on control, not destruction. Key infrastructure nodes were identified as decisive leverage points. Ground forces would advance only after dominance was established. Speed aimed to overwhelm response before coordination formed. Psychological shock was calculated into every movement. Information control would shape perception before facts emerged. Press responses were pre-written for multiple unfolding scenarios to them of Pratishth and Puris. Diplomatic channels prepared simultaneous explanations and denials. Allied reactions were forecast, weighted, and partially discounted. Opposition responses remained the greatest uncertainty. Contingencies multiplied faster than planners to simplify. Each contingency demanded resources beyond initial projections. Sustainment timelines quickly exceeded acceptable political thresholds. Civilian impact projections raised further strategic complications. The escalation risk extended beyond intended geographic boundaries. No clean endpoint could be confidently defined. Victory metrics blurred as costs accumulated silently. What followed restraint was intense internal reassessment. Temporally deflates. Plans remained, but confidence steadily eroded. Readiness persisted, though certainty no longer did. Faced Mospimmerchens. The next phase existed only on paper. Paper proved easier to contain than consequences. Friend of the visit setter. Thus, escalation remained hypothetical, not inevitable. History turned away from this prepared paths. Systems. What followed was silence, not aftermath. The war advanced no further than planning tables, and planning returned quietly to the archives. It still shaped doctrines, institutions, and future strategic behavior profoundly. Silence leaves lessons written only in margins of planning history. Decision-makers learned restraint can preserve power without visible confrontation. Avoided escalation became reference points for future crisis calculation. Military planning incorporated uncertainty as an operational constant thereafter. Commanders recognized momentum requires control, not blind acceleration. Logistics taught that preparation alone does not justify execution. Intelligence assessments gained prominence over operational enthusiasm. Information gaps proved more dangerous than enemy capabilities themselves. Leaders internalized limits of prediction during complex escalation environments. Political considerations re-entered military timelines earlier than before, and the public legitimacy emerged as critical operational constraint. Alliances were treated as dynamic variables, not fixed guarantees. Economic consequences gained parity with battlefield success metrics. Planners acknowledged victory without stability invites prolonged instability. Thus, restraint became integrated into formal strategic education. Future scenarios referenced this silence as precedent. Exercises simulated stopping points alongside attack phases. Engine trees expanded branches, labeled hesitation and delay. For you UX, generate a short cinematic video. Silence proved capable of deterring escalation indirectly. Advisories interpreted inaction through their own uncertainties. Ambiguity preserved strategic options longer than decisive force. History remembers outcomes, not paths deliberately abandoned. Yet abandoned paths continue influencing unseen calculations. Doctrine evolved quietly, without ceremonies or announcements. Hope it. Generate a short cinematic video. But institutions absorbed lessons nonetheless. Preparedness remained essential, tempered by strategic patience. The balance between action and restraint sharpened thereafter. This war's absence became a strategic data point. Silence entered archives alongside battles and victories. Future crises would reference what never occurred. Thus, history was shaped by restraint, not force. The lesson endured quietly, without monuments or dates. Some wars matter most because they never happened. If this silence mattered, subscribe now and keep watching History Unseen.